Today we're going to travel to Greece, and we're going to take a peek at a few of the many workshops that help keep Ball State University humming during the summer. Mrs. Lois Seward, who has taken 2 Ball State groups to Greece from the Minnetrista Center, shares her slides and talks with us about visiting Greece and how much more meaningful a trip of this kind is when we can get into homes and we can meet the people. Mrs. Seward, why have you chosen Greece? You seem to emphasize that.
Well, Greece has been a very deep interest of mine for more years than I care to admit, Jim. It all started back in my college days, and I've read and been involved in formal classes up until the last few years, and I just have had, I guess I'm what you call a Philhellene.
You prepared yourself then as the
Yes.
tour director for groups.
Well, yes, probably in a little more in-depth than most people perhaps would think of doing, and that is when I thought of taking a tour group for the School of Continuing Education through Minnetrista Center, I proposed this to John Koumoulides, professor in the history department, and he said, Lois, you can't travel in the parts of Greece that you want to without knowing the language. There's a language problem. So when you say you can't do something and you really want to, then you go ahead and if it's learning a language enough to get by, that's what you do.
And you've done that.
Yes, I have.
You studied it. Now, how about those who go with you? They're depending on you for your language. Supposing you become ill or...
Well, that could be a problem, Jim. And what I've done is always had a backup in all of the major cities. We have contact with the American consulates all over Greece so that they know we're there and that if we need help, they're available.
And they are very dependable, are they not?
Oh, yes, they are.
Members? Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed they are.
Why have you chosen these remote areas over the cities like Athens and the larger?
Well, if you go to Athens, you're not really seeing Greece. You're seeing a large city, such as coming to New York and saying you've seen America. The backcountry is such a contrast that you really can't believe. Most people think of Greece as hot and dry and rocky, but the northern part of the country is alpine, with snow-capped mountains and green forests. And if an individual really wants to learn about a country, that's the way to do it. Go to the backcountry areas, meet the people, and see how they live. Not only that, but of course we look at the history, starting with the Bronze Age, or the Stone Age actually. Bronze Age, the classical, the Roman, Byzantine and modern history of Greece.
How are you usually received by people in these remote areas?
Oh, very, very, very friendly people. In fact, I'd like to tell you a little anecdote about a very ancient tradition of the Greek people that's carried on today, especially in the remote areas. And that is, when you visit a home, you are greeted with a sweet. It might be a piece of chocolate, or the traditional is a preserved fruit, a spoon of it, and a glass of water. Well, this is very puzzling to the traveler in Greece who doesn't know what it means. But it's significant in that the spoon sweet is the sweetness of friendship and your visit. And of course, the water is not only to refresh you, but one of the most precious commodities of the Greeks. So it has a very ancient tradition and a very, I think, deep and pleasant meaning.
And how do most Americans react to this tradition?
Well, they're a little bit puzzled when first confronted with it. But of course, with my tour group, they know about it ahead of time, so that they know how to be gracious. And
that's very important.
It really is, yes.
So often we hear of the ugly American, and you know, we've all seen it, those
No,
of us
I'm,
that have been
I'm
overseas.
afraid we have, Jim, yes.
And why is it that the travelers can't accept native customs and some of the inconvenience that they might encounter?
Well, I think perhaps part of it is that they need a little educating. And it's not knowing what to expect. And it's feeling a little insecure, too, especially if you can't read street signs or billboards or you don't know what people are saying. But one of the best rules of thumb to take with you when you travel overseas, in Greece or anywhere else, are your best manners.
And a smile.
And a smile, yes.
That works everywhere.
Yes, it does.
Yes. Let's take a look at some of the slides. These are places you visited and you took the photographs.
Yes, I did. Of course, this is the Acropolis in Athens, and it's the first thing that the visitor to Greece wants to see, and it's well worth it. It's almost overwhelming when you're walking up what they call the ancient sacred way, and this beautiful, beautiful building that you've probably seen in history books and heard talked about over the years in school.
What was its
And
function?
there it is, the Parthenon. Actually, it was what the name signifies, home of the Virgin Goddess Athena. That's what the
So it's a
Parthenon
monument,
means.
actually. It had no day-to-day function. Maybe ceremonial?
Ceremonial, yes, but it really is the apartment of Athena.
Is it visible from any point in Athens? It looks like it's on a high hill.
Yes, it is. That is a rock outcropping, and it is visible from most of the city, except if you're down in the areas, well, that are low. Then, of course, you can't see it. This is a little better close-up of it, and it shows the preservation program that's going on. Unfortunately, due to severe pollution, the limestone, which is very susceptible to the acid rains and is really deteriorated by it, will eventually, they say, probably within the next 10, 15 years, destroy the structure. So they're trying to preserve it, and they clean it regularly, and that's what that scaffolding is.
Is most of this man-made damage?
Pollution
Desecration,
damage.
pollution?
Well, not all of it. The reason the roof is gone is that the Acropolis, or the Parthenon, excuse me, has been used, was used by the Turks as a powder magazine back during the War for Independence that the Greeks fought with Turkey. And it was bombed, and a shell hit it, and the powder magazine blew up. And
Surprising the
that's
whole
why
building wasn't destroyed.
It really is. It's
But
incredible.
the roof, it went through the roof.
Yes. Yes.
Lovely.
Well, this is springtime in Greece, and the wildflowers are just incredible. And a picnic in a meadow or up on a mountainside with the poppies and all the different types of wildflowers is just plain heavenly.
Photographs we see of Greece, the sky is always so blue, the weather looks so pleasant. Is this true?
When you're outside Athens, yes. Athens is just terribly smoggy because of the enormous number of automobiles. It really isn't an industrial city, but out in the countryside, yes, the sky is very blue.
A Mediterranean type
Mediterranean
of blueness, yes.
blue. This is the approach to Delphi, the seat of the famous oracle. And as you see, the setting is really in a mountain area. The Greeks, the ancient Greeks thought that was the center of the world, and to them it was. Their world, I should say. And this is another view looking down into the sanctuary of Apollo. You can just barely make out the columns to the left.
It appears
behind
that there are ruins everywhere.
There are many ruins, some of which are more visible than others, and some have had some slight reconstruction, not enough to spoil the effect. In fact, there's a lot of controversy about that. This is a mountain village that I think typifies that particular area of Greece where it's dry and rocky.
It looks inaccessible. How would you get there?
Oh, there'd be a road. At one time, of course, there were donkey roads.
You don't have to, there are no places that you go that are so remote that you would use the donkey.
Not really anymore, unless if you were John Koumoulides and going into the Evrytania area to look for ancient or Byzantine monasteries, then yes, you probably would. But donkeys are still used by the people in the mountainous areas to attend their sheep or their fields, because donkey power is a lot more economical than any other way, and it also doesn't destroy the atmosphere.
Very dependable.
Very dependable. Now, there's something for everyone in Greece, and the reason I included this slide is the stork. Bird watchers, bird lovers are very interested in the birds of Greece, which are, of course, very different from those that we see in North America. And, of course, the story of the stork and what their function is pretty obvious, because they frequently build their nests on the top of a chimney.
And they allow them to do that.
Oh my goodness, yes, they're encouraged.
They're encouraged.
Because they eat the insects in the fields behind the plows. Now, this is a family that we visited. This couple happened to be in their 80s. They have gone through many of the wars that of recent vintage. They are farming people. And one of the things I wanted to point out is, and that's their little grandson with them, is that a flower garden in Greece does not take up their whole yard as we do, because ground for growing vegetables and farm crops is very precious. So their flowers are planted around their
in pots.
In pots.
This is lovely.
Mount Olympus, home of the gods.
A little valley in a village in the valley.
Yes. The village's name is Litohoro, home of Queen Hera, or Leto.
You do know your history.
Yes. This is Meteora, a very peculiar area due to the rock formations, important because of the monasteries that were built there in the 10th century.
Is that a monastery?
That is a monastery.
On a natural rock formation?
Yes, those are all natural rock
Looks like a road goes around it or through it or something.
Well, the road does go below it, but how they built those structures is beyond comprehension. But they did. And this is Metsova in the Pindos mountain range, which is an alpine area, and the red rugs on the right are very typical of the woolen weaving and embroidery done there.
The local cottage industry.
Yes, yes.
And this is not what we think of as Greece.
Typically Greece at all, and yet it is.
Beautiful.
The other evening, they're in the series In Search of the Trojan War. Perhaps some of the people saw this particular spot. It is called the Tomb of Agamemnon, although it really isn't. It's at Mykina, and it's a Bronze Age beehive tomb.
My, that's very old.
This is Corinth. The columns right in the center are really the oldest standing columns in Greece. They're not built of drums, they're built of solid porous limestone. And this building structure predated the Parthenon by at least a century.
Solid
Those
columns.
are solid columns, Doric in structure. And this is probably what people think more typically of Greece, the bare rocky area. And that happens to be a Venetian fort built in the southern part of Greece in the Peloponnese.
Still maintained as an historical
Yes, it is.
point
It's
of
still
interest?
maintained. And the harbor at Nafplio, that's a very lovely, lovely small city, and really probably one of the most picturesque due to the lovely color of the water. And another aspect of Greece, of course, is the ancient ruins, and this happens to be on the island of Santorini, which was buried under a volcanic explosion in 1415 BC, has been excavated. No people, no remains of humans were found, but the village, which dates back to the Minoan period, again, 1415 or before, is still very, very much well preserved. And the island of Santorini, volcanic, bare, but still very beautiful.
Certainly very inviting.
Well, it is.
You make it very interesting. Are you planning trip in the near future?
Yes, going to be taking a group in September, and we'll be there for 2 weeks, visiting primarily on the mainland, north and south, and a few of the islands in the Saronic Gulf.
Do you go to adjacent countries at all?
No,
Albania or
no,
something?
this is strictly Greece.
Strictly
Yes.
Greece, and that's where your main interest lies.
Yes, it really is. And I would have to start learning more languages and more history if I were to take groups anywhere else.
In just our short 15 minutes, I've learned more about Greece than in all my studies. And I think it would be very rewarding to take a trip with you.
Well, thank you, Jim. I hope you do. That's part of my purpose in being here and agreeing to talk with you.
Good. Thank you so much. Our guest on Ball State today has been Lois Seward, who takes Ball State University groups from the Minnetrista Center to Greece. In just a moment, we're going to talk about what happens at Ball State during the summer months.
Okay.
Several thousand people attend conferences and workshops at Ball State University each summer. Dave Stout, Director of Conferences and Special Events at Ball State, handles the hundreds of details to help the Ball State experience become more enjoyable for those who attend. And Dave, what kind of people come to Ball State during these months?
Well, Jim, we have a real wide variety. The biggest conference is starting this very weekend, in fact, the International Thespian Society. That involves some 2,500 high school dramas, teachers, and their students. More students, of course, than teachers. And they come from all over the country. In fact, this year, the opening production, the first night production, is being done by a group from Hawaii. And they fly in their sets, partially by boat, partially by air, and it's just a major configuration to get that to work, and it just arrives in the nick of time, usually.
They've been coming here for many years.
But this is about their 10th year, Jim, at Ball State.
Why did they choose Ball State? The 2,300 and about that number each year.
Right. Well, I really don't know. They actually started coming to Ball State before I had this position, but then they continued to reschedule year after year. In fact, we have them now scheduled through 1989. I would think one of the reasons, or I would hope one of the reasons, is that they like the Ball State campus and the services provided from housing, dining, food service, my office, and the whole perspective of services that are provided. Apparently they find very, very satisfactory. I think another very important factor is the auditorium. Emmons Auditorium, of course, is just a beautiful facility, and there's very few facilities like that, as you well know, in the country, and the students are just overwhelmed. The students who come from all these high schools have just never seen a theater.
There are other groups that use Emmons too, and we're going to show in just a moment the videotape a music camp.
Right.
But how many groups do we have, and what are the numbers? They must number in the, well, 2,300, so obviously thousands come.
Right. Our latest count, and of course this is based on the estimates that the people give us, and it might vary by the time summer's over, but our latest count is 11,000 persons participating in about 70 different events. So between now and the end of August, we'll have 11,000 people participate in one program or another on the campus.
So that keeps a lot of people at Ball State very busy.
It does. In fact, it's good for not only the community, because of the revenue that comes in. People have to buy gas for their cars and food on the way to and from the campus and so on, but it's also very good for our own Ball State University personnel. People such as residence hall directors and dining service personnel are perfect examples. They are only contracted to work 9 months during the school year. So if we didn't have this many people, or if we didn't have conferences at all, then they would have no employment during those 3 months.
And you have a wide range of types too.
Indeed we do. In addition to the thespians, which we've mentioned, we have a large variety of sports camps. Our athletics department is sponsoring workshops and such things as basketball, swimming, volleyball, just virtually any sport you can name. There is a workshop that ties in with that. Another thing this year, we have more high school band camps than ever before. Now these, of course, are high schools that come to the campus generally to practice to get ready for a state fair contest or perhaps the Delaware County Fair contest. And this year we've added 2 bands who've never been here before. One of them is Indianapolis Pike, which is a rather large band, and another is Southern Wells, which is just north of the city here.
Let's take a look at the variety of workshops that we have. This videotape was taken yesterday, so it's very current.
Great.
And this is a computer science workshop conducted by Professors Earl McKinney and Roger Nelson. And they're teaching 20 high school juniors and seniors from all over Indiana and neighboring states. And I was amazed at what was being taught in this class. It was way above me.
It's a very intense experience, and these kids are just absolute wizards. Our office, just to put a little personal note, just went to computerization, and it is a major effort to learn, but these kids nowadays are so far advanced at an early age, it's amazing.
And here we have a swimming camp, and we get more than 200 experienced swimmers in the summertime.
And later we'll have diving later on in the summer, so there's a series of about 6 such camps, Jim.
I was going to ask you the age of those attending these camps, but I found out when we videotaped the swimming camp that they're from 8 to high school age, 8 years?
Yes,
to,
they have
16.
virtually every age as long as they can swim. I guess that's the only requirement.
They learn a different stroke each day at this
Yeah.
summer camp, and they have time trials in the evening. That's typical, isn't it?
Yes, isn't it, though?
Youngsters in their big beach towels.
Right, exactly.
And most of them belong to competitive teams. Now, they're watching a videotape, and it is analyzed. It's individually analyzed and reported on, and they get to see how they look. And most of these are competitive swimmers.
Right. It's one of the best ways to learn. We do that with many workshops, videotape and then play back. For various skill type workshops, it's an excellent way to see how you're doing or not doing, as the
Yes.
case may be.
They were using stop motion in
Sure.
this. Now, this is music camp, and this was an orchestra in the lovely setting of Emmons Auditorium. And none seem more dedicated than the high school students attending the Mid-America music camps. This is Camp 1.
Right, and there are there's one other, and then there's also a show choir camp for the first time this summer called the Jensen Show Choir Clinic.
Oh.
So it's a brand new activity for us. It's coordinated by our School of Music, but conducted by an off-campus agency, which is in the music publishing business.
Look at that setting. Isn't that lovely?
That's why the thespian students are so amazed.
Now, this is speech and hearing, and high school students attending the Ball State Speech and Hearing Workshop conducted by Dr. Richard Artist get individual work with handicapped children. And this is to see if they might like the profession. Did you know that there are only 9 occupations that show greater potential than speech and hearing therapists?
No, I did not.
That's amazing. And we have a shot of the bulletin board. They have 75 job openings. And I guess that's just a few of the opportunities waiting for speech and hearing therapists. These positions that are posted at the Ball State University, and incidentally, the Ball State program is considered one of the finest in the country.
That's right, exactly.
And I think we have something like 20 high school, both men and women are interested in this field.
Absolutely.
Very dedicated, and that one-on-one with the handicapped student gives them a great opportunity to learn about a new career. And there's the bulletin board. Jobs ranging from $20,000 to $25,000 starting out in this field. Isn't that?
It is absolutely amazing.
Really?
Yeah,
And
it
this-
looks like basketball, huh? No
Indeed,
doubt.
That's Al Brown's basketball camp.
Right.
One of the most popular for budding athletes. And well-filled, over 200 for the Brown camp.
Right.
And that's excellent considering that other schools in the state also have a basketball camp. And then I understand we have 400 that come in for this professional camp.
It's called the Metro Index Basketball Camp, and it's sponsored by an organization in Pennsylvania. And that's right, their number is about 400. So this is the best summer ever for basketball turnout for the camps combined. We're talking like 800 or 900 people, I suppose.
Indeed. And that metrics is for those invited only, by invitation.
That's right. So it's actually an honor to be. It's a competitive sort of situation. In addition to that, they've also added, even I think after our schedule was typed, an officials camp to go hand in hand with that. They're going to bring in some high school officials who are going to work with the students and hone their skills at the same time.
Good. One of the coaches in this videotaping was from Ohio, so we also employ people from other
Why,
states.
yes, we certainly do. Absolutely.
And the students come from everywhere. In the basketball camp, there was one from Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
In computers, I think we had them from the Chicago area. We got them from many states.
Oh, that's absolutely true, Jim. And probably, as again we said earlier, the most diverse one is the thespians. They usually have a map in the lobby of Emmons Auditorium, put in little pins for each delegation in the state. And by the time that the conference is all registered, you'll find little pins in virtually every state of the USA.
Is there any problem more common than another that you have to deal with?
Really, we're never surprised by anything, I'll be honest. We've been through this for so many different years, and people say amazingly, how can your office remain so calm? We simply have to, because with, 70 events, as I said, and 11,000 persons, or that potential for that many problems, 70 times 11,000. So there's probably not any situation we haven't seen or dealt with, and I think in general we're pretty well prepared for virtually anything. We do find that the larger the conference, say for example the thespians or the basketball camp, the more organized that they are. And of course that's essential for them. If they're going to put on a program of that scale, they have to be very, very well organized. The usual problems that we have are with people who are perhaps for the first time putting on a conference or workshop, and we try our best to work with them, but inevitably they perhaps forget something and there's a last-minute confusion about something. So we try and bridge that gap for what I guess I would call the novice conference planner.
I was talking to Dr. Richard Hoops when we were videotaping the speech and hearing. He's chairman of the department. And we wanted to know what percentage of the students who participated in the workshops, and they're all up to the high school level, chose Ball State as their college. And he said 40 to 45% of those who attend the speech and hearing workshop return as students.
That, of course, is the other excellent aspect to getting these students on the campus, the fact that they may, in fact, choose to become our students at a later date. I know also that orientation and admissions, they do a survey of incoming freshmen, and there is a certain percentage, and I don't recall the figure, not quite that high, but many of our students, say perhaps 10 to 15%, as I recall, say that their first exposure to our campus was a conference or a workshop. So getting the students here is one of the very best student recruiting tools you can have.
We have such a lovely campus.
Right.
I was talking to an assignment editor at a major Indianapolis television station yesterday, and he mentioned that he was a Ball State graduate, and he said the reason he chose the campus was because of its beauty. He liked the beautiful campus.
No, I can see why, and I hope all of our students this summer have a great experience.
I'm sure they will, Dave, and I think it's directly attributable to your office.
Well, thank you. We do our best, and I've got a good staff to help me. It's not just me, believe me.
Good. Thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome.
Our guest has been David Stout, Director of Conferences and Special Events at Ball State University. And we've also talked and visited with Lois Seward, who took us on a trip to Greece. Thank you for joining us.